Hi, everybody. Well, today I'd like to speak about a question that I've been asked on my Thursday night show and then also by a couple of parishioners. And that's in reference to an interview that Joe Rogan had recently with Mel Gibson, where Mel Gibson criticized the Pope for an interaction that he had with what is called the Pachamama.
I mean, we got a Pope that brought a South American idol into the church to worship.
Really?
He did. The Pachamama. He bought the South American, and he got.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like a South American god, Pachamama.
Why would he do that?
Good question.
Now, this is an idol, if we can call it that comes out of the tribes of the Amazon. And recently, the Pope on his synod in the Amazon had gone down to work with the native people that were there, and Mel Gibson had said that he had actually allowed an idol to be presented during the worship service, and that also that particular idol was then brought to the Vatican gardens.
There you go.
So he brought that in?
Yeah, into the Vatican. The hierarchy even worshipped it. They had a ceremony around it outside.
What?
So I know that many of you here have already seen me speak about ecumenism, and I know that that can be a bad word in Orthodoxy, but it doesn't have to be. However, here we have a case where we've carried ecumenism too far.
Did he have an explanation for why he did it?
Yeah, it's kind of a weasel-worded thing of like, oh, all religions are just as good as one another. But, if that's his contention.
He shouldn't be the Pope.
No. I mean,
how can you be the Pope if you say all religions are just as good?
Ecumenism is really defined as being in communication with somebody, but not sacrificing what are your dogmas, your doctrines, your ethics, and your principles. So has the Orthodox Church had experience with indigenous cultures? Certainly. We've had that in Russia, where Cyril Methodius went and they evangelized to the land of Rus, which became the Russian Orthodox Church. We have it in Africa, where they've gone into villages in Kenya and in Ethiopia, and they have worked with those indigenous people. And then, of course, St. Paul's interaction with the Athenians. Remember when he saw the statue to the unknown God and he says, I know the name of your God. And he's told them and he complimented them and says, I see that you are a very religious people. Okay, so these are acts of ecumenism that we have throughout the church's history. But what we cannot allow is to allow then idols to be brought into and incorporated into our worship. It is one thing now to discuss the possibilities that there is always at least a glimmer of truth in some of the pagan cultures that we see. All right. But what that does not allow us as the Christian faith to do is then to say that they have an equal standing in our Orthodox faith. And where does that glimmer of truth comes from? It comes from the divine spark that is in all of us. And that's always been what our saints have always looked for in everybody that they have evangelized to. And all of our saints have said, yes, every human being made in the image and likeness of God has the presence of the Holy Spirit in him. Not certainly not the essence, but that presence. And that's how the Orthodox Church evangelizes. But in this case, what we have is by bringing it into the worship service. And again, we can argue back and forth over whether it just represented Mother Earth or whether it was just a pregnant woman. But in any case, it does represent something that is not of the Christian faith and an idol. And from that perspective, we can speak about it and we can admire it and say, okay, this is from the indigenous culture and here's what the history is, but we cannot allow it to be part of our service. Just as I wouldn't bring into our worship services something that is specifically Jewish or is specifically Buddhist or is specifically Islam, okay? Because we have to maintain the separation of who we are as Christians and what it is that we believe. So, at the end, Mel Gibson said that this represented apostasy.
Worshipping false gods.
Yeah, that's number one on the Mosaic hit list. That's called apostasy.
Right.
That's a falling away from it. And the very nature of apostasy means that you have to be part of it to fall away from it.
Mm-hmm.
So apostasy from the Greek means to stand away from something. Accepting something into our Christian worship service and then allowing prayers to be said with reference to that does stand apart from what our Christian faith is and from our dogmas and our doctrines, because we are placing something else that is besides now Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So in that sense, I do have to agree with Mel Gibson that that can constitute apostasy. So thanks everybody for listening. I just wanted to take a little bit of time to address this recent issue and speak specifically about, although ecumenism can have its place, if abused, then it is certainly dangerous and it's something we need to be very cautious with.